can't ever remember my passwords.
You've got the same one for everything. All of your passwords are the same, Mark.
Don't ask me. Yeah, and I save them. I save them on here. When I finally figure them out, I'll say save password. And then I'll stay logged in. I'm one of those people, I just kind of stay logged in
Yeah.
until I go to switch accounts, which I never use on here. And then it's like, re-enter your password. Well, crud, you know?
That's why all my stuff would be easy to hack, because I keep pretty much one password for everything, so it's easy to remember. Otherwise, I gotta write it down. And what's the point in having a password if you gotta write it down?
All I know is if I die, my legacy account gets turned over to you, so you'll have access. You won't have to try to figure it out.
Okay. What's a legacy account?
You go on your settings on Facebook, and it's like in the event that you die, you can grant access to some other person. You can memorialize your page where people can still leave messages, but I don't think anybody else can really access or edit anything.
Yeah.
And then the last one is delete the account or inactivate the page.
Oh, so it just gives somebody else control over all
Yeah.
your stuff? I'd just keep posting like you were still alive.
You probably would.
He's got me in this box.
No.
My phone battery life is down to 50%.
People now wouldn't fit in a box.
You don't know what kind of box, what size box I'm talking.
Fridge box.
Yeah.
Not one of those dainty little
Piano case.
floor lamp boxes.
Alright, so we'll do an intro. Any anecdotes, news, notes that you want to talk about? Questions, etc. Do turkey season recap, stories, kids, what's happening at home, deer season prep, scouting, that type of stuff. You just kind of go from there. Anything specific you want to cover?
No, just that I guess that I'll be trying to include some more stuff that since I've gotten my second wind
Yeah.
as a homemaker, I'm trying to include more about things we're doing around here specifically. I guess I'll talk about it. But like I posted about that cleaner, we're not going, I mean, that's not what our site is going to be about, but to kind of fit some of those things in for families and really to personalize our page more.
Alright, you need pen, piece of paper to keep notes on, just in case stuff runs through your head.
Sure.
That way you can write it down and refer back to it. You know how sometimes you'll have a thought while somebody else is talking, and then by the time they get done with it, you've forgotten what your thought was. You got a pen, I got a paper.
I got one.
I stole a notebook.
If I go to refer something, Facebook or Insta, I'll use my phone. Anything else will be computer.
Alright, well, we've been recording for about 4 minutes now, so we'll... Alright guys, welcome back to the Motivus Outdoors podcast. We are sitting here in our dining room today. We had planned on doing this recording in the shop. It's a little bit more outdoorsy with all of the taxidermy and the setting out there, but it's raining, and when it's raining, our lights in the shop won't come on because the humidity keeps those fluorescent bulbs from coming on. I need to get new lights out there. It's just one of the many things on the list of stuff to do. And so sitting across from me, if you're listening, is Casey, and if you're watching, obviously you can see that she's sitting right there. So we've got one face made for radio, and then her face, which is made for viewing. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's been a couple of weeks since we dropped our last podcast. Turkey season's over. It's been over for a couple of weeks, thank goodness. I've never taken a licking during the turkey season like I have this year. And some of that's my fault, but it was just kind of a strange season. The turkeys were there, but they just weren't gobbling. And then the ones that did gobble wouldn't cooperate. But there were several times when I was 100 yards from a turkey, called, and then turned the corner and there he was, but he never said anything. Lone gobbler by himself, they just were not gobbling this year, at least not up here. And the reports that I got from a lot of people was that it was kind of hit and miss. And it was either feast or famine. Either you had a great season or you had a terrible season. So anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. I didn't want to start out talking about that. What I want to talk about first is just any news, notes type stuff that you have, that's run across your page. Anything that's interesting from the conservation world that you want to talk about?
No, I do want to talk about the promoted podcast for the turkey numbers. What was that?
On with Michael Chamberlain,
Yeah.
and Brett Collier.
Yeah, I want to hear your take on that beforehand, but I know we'll get to that in turkey season.
Yeah.
Convo.
They're having another Q&A, not a Q&A, but another Facebook Live session tonight to talk about some stuff. And they've been walking down pretty much everything from predation to nesting habitat, and I think tonight they're going to tackle most people's biggest concern, which is the population decline, what's happening to our turkeys, where they're going, and who the bad guy is and all that stuff. And so that should be interesting. You got two of the brightest minds in turkey biology that are going to be doing pretty much just emptying their safe out for you. And they've been doing that for a couple of weeks now, which is just really great information. So if you're interested in turkeys, turkey habitat, turkey behavior, turkey hunting, you need to log in. I know Michael Chamberlain has it linked on his Facebook page. We've got it linked on our social media, and National Wild Turkey Federation and WTF has it linked on theirs. So that's always, it's just good free education and just something that's easily accessible, and it's just a wealth of knowledge that's going to be coming out of those guys there. One thing I did see that came across was that Colorado has a bill that that's getting pushed through, or that not pushed through, but a bill that's going through the state legislature now, where non-consumptive users on certain state lands and certain game trust lands, and these are lands that are privately owned but are leased to the state of Colorado for outdoor recreation, specifically hunting and fishing. And Colorado is about to pass a bill, and I need to check on it. It's been about a week or so since I've seen it come across my desk, but Colorado is about to pass a bill that is going to require non-consumptive users of those lands to hold a valid state hunting and fishing license. And what that means going forward is going to be kind of hard to predict, because there's a lot of people most people reside in one of two camps. Either you want to keep the hikers and the bikers, and as they classify anybody, and so most of the people that reside in this camp think that everybody who doesn't hunt and fish is anti-hunting and fishing. And they're true they're true to the extent, they're correct to the extent that obviously everybody who is anti-hunting doesn't hunt and fish, but a large portion of these non-consumptive users that are using these properties either don't have an opinion about hunting or they support hunting. But this one camp says that as soon as you start charging them, now all of a sudden they have a seat at the table and they're in the decision-making process. And then there's the other camp that says any revenue is good revenue, and they already have a seat at the table and they're already in the decision-making process, and so you may as well get the revenue from them. And so what this means is that if these people who are using these lands for reasons other than hunting and fishing all of a sudden have to start buying hunting and fishing license, Pittman-Robertson dollars are distributed based on license sales and total acreage within the state. And so you get so many dollars per acre of land in the state from the federal government. And then the rest of it is based on how many hunting licenses are bought in that state. And so I see what they're doing. One, they're wanting to increase revenue so that they can take better care of these lands, but also that means more dollars coming back into the state of Colorado in the form of PR dollars. I'm kind of in the middle. I think there needs to be a way for consumptive users and non-consumptive users to both to contribute to the public lands that they love and that they utilize. I don't know that them buying a hunting and fishing license is the right way to go about it. I don't disagree with it, because I think everybody ought to buy a hunting and fishing license. If you care about fish and wildlife, why aren't you buying a hunting and fishing license? You can't really consider yourself a conservationist without taking that first step in conservation. And you and I talk about it all the time, is that there's a group that we refer to out there called, we call the click and share conservationists, where they're really quick to click on an article or share a link to an article, but they don't really do anything beyond that. They don't join any organizations because they're, self-proclaimed anarchists at heart, and they don't want to be associated with a group, or the groups that they were a part of, they've now disbanded from because they don't always 100% fit their ideology, which I challenge anybody to find any politician, group, organization that 100% fits your ideology. You're just not going to find it. There's always going to be some areas where you depart, but from a conservation standpoint, if you claim to care about public lands and having lands protected from development and wildlife and fish, and you don't go buy a fishing license or a hunting license in your state, if nothing else, then to contribute that $25, $50, whatever it may be, then any opinions that you have, in my opinion, are moot at that point.
But I always take you back to this from the perspective of somebody that, I wouldn't necessarily equate a license with support of conservation. Had I not been educated, I think that when we laugh and talk about the conversations that are being had,
right.
I think that there's a perspective of the license, of any license like that, just being for sport and not truly seeing it as money going to, or tax dollars going to support a cause.
Yeah. And so do you think that that's because us as hunters have failed to do a good job of supporting our cause, that we've been too exclusionary in that aspect of things to allow people like yourself before? When I say people like yourself, I mean you 5 years ago, that we're not doing a good enough job of making that known. It's like, hey, this is of letting people know that when you buy a hunting license, when you buy a fishing license, you get a tick mark in the column, and PR dollars come back into your state to help your state with state parks, national forests, your game and fish departments, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think too, yes, the answer is yes. There's not enough being said from hunters about it in a way, because it goes both ways, where there's this wall put up, like you talked about. If you're not 100% in agreement with me, even if you only are in agreement with me with the 1%, I'm putting up my wall because I don't want to hear any of your nonsense and what you have to say. When that 1% could be an open door, not to sound naive or political, but it really could just be that little sliver of common thought process to kind of open the door. It's, you and I talk about it, we're tribal by nature. Hunters are going to hang out with hunters because, you know, that's what we talk about. Had you and I not ended up together, I don't know how many hunting friends I would have, even be connected to through social media. See, we have other platforms too where I can be connected within 3 degrees of friends, and get some sort of information like that. Even as part of the hunting community and being in that circle now, there's really not a whole lot of push for support in those areas. So I question and wonder if hunters who are paying for these licenses see beyond the immediate need and what they're about to use it for. But you have to somehow connect these tribes and these interest groups in some form or fashion.
Right. Well, and I think that speaks a lot towards, I think it speaks a lot to today's mentality, in that if you're not, you have all these subculture groups, right? You got hunters in one corner, and then you can further divide that into bow hunters and gun hunters, and then you can further divide that into dog hunters and still hunters. And so the idea is, what's the diagram with the overlapping circles?
The Venn diagram.
Venn diagram, right? And so instead of having this Venn diagram where you have your interest, I have my interest, and those circles overlap, now everybody, it's a game of Twister. Like, nobody's circles are overlapping. Everybody wants to be in their camp and their camp only. And then you've got your Gestapo spies inside those camps, and if you don't 100% agree with everything that's going on inside that camp, then they want to exile you or shame you into, it's this cancel culture of, well, if you don't 100% agree, like, you can't be a hunter in some circles, you can't be a hunter and be a proponent of predators on the landscape. And so, somebody like myself who sees the benefit and value of coyotes, cougars, and wolves in the wild, now all of a sudden it's like I'm a left-leaning green decoy anti-hunter, and I've just infiltrated the hunting community to try and change the culture, right? And so everybody wants to say that coyotes are the end-all be-all of evil. But if you don't shoot every one you see, then all of a sudden, you love predators more than you love wildlife, and you don't want people to hunt. And it's just not true. It's just not true. Like, it's okay for us not to all think and feel the same way, but where we have to concentrate, and especially when we start talking about conservation and public lands, and I'm not even concentrating on public lands, but private lands as well, because those deer cross fences back and forth onto private, turkeys cross back and forth onto private, elk do the same thing. And so when you look at those tax dollars and those license sales dollars, and Pittman Robertson is not based Pittman Robertson is based on sales tax of hunting equipment. But then you look at funds from the Land Water Conservation Fund that are that get to come in on top of that. People get real tribal about that stuff, And I think we've done a crappy job. Like, we suck at educating the non-hunting public on how these lands are funded, what conservation actually looks like at the ground level, and not this conversation level. I'm talking about getting your hands dirty, getting some calluses level, whether that be joining organizations, buying hunting license, or actually physically going out and doing work days, things like that. Because most people want to sit back in their chairs and bitch, moan, cry, and complain that things aren't perfect, and then all they're either doing is sending nasty emails to somebody and not offering any solutions, or just punching that like button or the angry face button and then sharing an article, and then they don't do anything beyond that.
And the question is why. It's not always, I don't want to say it's 100% each group's fault for not reaching out. I think that's a little too much. I think that you have to take into account that clickbait, what do you call it? What do we call it?
Clickbait.
Yeah, but you said click conservation.
Click and share conservation.
Click and share, yeah. So the click and share conservation is a click and share because it's quick.
Right.
And finding out all these things takes time. And so It even takes a weekend or a Saturday sacrifice from being in the woods to show up at the farmer's market and try to appeal to a different part of the population if you're passionate about it.
Right.
But then the question becomes, are people truly passionate about it, or are they just projecting that for whatever reasons?
Yeah.
And so the flip side goes to that non-consumptive user that claims to be a conservationist. They have to take time out of their whatever they're doing, which everybody's time's limited, to go and see, how are these, like you mentioned, cleanup. If they actually showed up to a public lands cleanup and saw the number of people decked out in full hunting camo to clean, in connection with the other people scattered throughout in casual wear, sporting wear, whatever, then I think that also too would kind of change their perspective and find that in them finding that common ground. So I don't think it's just neglect and stubbornness as much as it is time and sacrifice.
Yeah. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good first step. It's not what I would like to see as far as making those users, the non-hunter users of those lands, buy a hunting and fishing license. I've always been in favor of, and golly, I can't believe as somebody who classifies himself as primary libertarian is actually going to say this on a recorded media, but I think you hit them at the backpack tax. You go anything that they can buy at REI. What's the Sunrift Adventures up in TR? Any of these places, backpacks and camping gear, things of that nature. You need to have a point of sale tax like Pittman Robertson and Dingle, on the hunting side, and Dingle Johnson on the fishing side, that does the exact same thing on the non-consumptive outdoor recreational side. Mountain bikes, all of that stuff. If they get ridden on public land, tax them, just like we have to pay that tax. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And my argument is, put your money where your mouth is. And it's easy to, it's easy to, have access to all of this stuff, but, put some skin in the game like hunters have been doing. I mean, hunters are the reason why we have all these animals. Once we recognized that market hunting was killing off our wildlife and that we weren't taking care of our land and taking care of our animals, the North American model of wildlife conservation has been a huge success story. And, I think it's about time that non-hunters get involved in that. And so my opinion would be hit them at the cash register with a point of sales tax that, call it the Patagonia tax. Let that creep, spend some money instead of trashing hunters. I know there's some people that are a fan of that guy, but if you've ever listened to him for more than 5 minutes, I just can't get on board with it. But anyway, there's that. Anything else run across your news feed lately? So we talked about Dr. Collier and Dr. Chamberlain and their stuff. Talked about Colorado. Nothing else?
No.
All right. So turkey season sucked. And I'm very thankful that God allowed me to live another year and to see another turkey season. I really thought that this was gonna be the first season that in a long time that I've gone without killing a turkey. And I know there are people out there saying boo-hoo, cry me a river, you only killed one bird. But it's all about your baseline and what you're used to. And we've just been used to putting several birds a year in the freezer. And unfortunately, we were not able to get you your first turkey this year. And
I was going to say, at least you saw one.
right.
That was not, the only turkey I saw was a hen on our own property.
Yeah. Well, which is good news.
It's good, but I've only seen her once. Keep trying to look for her.
Good news. Casey did see a hen with poults on our home farm here on our home 41. And she's come across and nested on us, I think, for 3 years now. And I was beginning to wonder if she was going to show back up this year. And then I saw some scratching up there. Jackson and I saw her from the driveway across the creek up on the hill before it leafed out real hard. And then you saw her down by the creek, right at one of our gates one day, and got some pictures of her with some poults out there. So that was encouraging to see that there are turkeys moving back into this area.
And granted, I only went twice. I only went hunting twice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
odds weren't really in my favor.
And we'll get to that in just a second. So, from the get-go, man, it was just weird. It's just like the turkeys didn't want to work. They gobble, very sparingly on the roost, and then once they hit the ground, they were pretty much silent. I had one bird on one of our lease properties that I bumped into him and played cat and mouse with him a couple of times. And then one morning, it was actually the morning after I had taken you out for the first afternoon, and you and I mainly just did about 4 hours of deer scouting that day. Didn't hear any birds gobble. I went back in there the next morning, and there was a line of storms that was coming through right about daylight. So I went out, sat through the rain, waited until I figured, once the rain quit, hopefully they'd start gobbling and the birds would move out into the fields to kind of get dried out. And then this property, so if you can picture this gas line that runs through our property, and this gas line runs across these ridges and valleys, right? And so if you picture this gas line as running across the top of a sine wave, and so I'm standing on one ridge looking across this hollow and looking out at the other ridge, and it had just quit raining. The sun's coming up behind me, and it's still kind of foggy, and I'm just standing there listening to see if anything starts gobbling on its own, and all of a sudden I see this bird fly down right into the gas line. And I'm standing right in the middle of it, and but he's probably a little better than a half a mile away at this point. And as soon as he hits the gas line, he turns and he starts walking down the hill towards me. And I'm watching him walk. I'm looking at him through the binoculars, verified, that it indeed was a male turkey, a gobbler, had a beard on him. Once he gets into the bottom where he can't see me anymore if I move, I just kind of slide over to the side, move down about 15, 20 yards and lean up against a tree about 5 yards off the edge of the gas line. And it took him about 10 minutes. after about 10 minutes, I heard him gobble, and it was like he was about halfway up the hill when he gobbled the first time. And then about 2 minutes later, he gobbled, and he was just out of sight, maybe 17, 18 yards. And then, like I said, about 2 seconds later, his head popped into view at about 15 yards, and by that time I was already down on the stock and had it lined up, base of the wattles, and touched the trigger off and let it eat. Never made a call. So it was a straight up ambush, but after the way he had treated me for the last couple of weeks, and after the season that I had been having, I did not feel bad about ambushing that turkey. He could have gone any of the remaining 359 degrees from the point that he impacted that gas line, and he would have been safe, but he chose the wrong line and walked right into it. So, you know, fair chase, it was on him from there. Then rest of the season was kind of like, you know, wash, rinse, repeat, get up, go, walk 3 or 4 miles. And this was on public land and private, and just a little bit of gobbling off the roost, and then nothing after that. And then right towards the end of the season, it was about 3 or 4 days left in the season, I got you back out again, and we went to a friend of ours' place that, you know, has some turkeys on it. It's a small piece of property, but James lets us go out there a couple times a year to hunt. We still haven't killed anything out there, but it's not his fault. And so sure enough, right at daylight, we start hearing a turkey gobble. In the direction where these birds typically roost, we hear this bird gobble. And I kind of look at you, and I was like, is that a turkey?
And I thought it was a dog.
You're like, no, I think it was a dog barking. And so we moved, you know, a little bit closer in that direction, and sure enough, it was a turkey gobbling. But it sounded kind of funny, so I figured, I was like, just based on the way this bird's gobble sounded and how short it was, real loud on the front end, trailing off on the back end, but it was a very short, almost like every time he gobbled, he was asking a question, not making a statement, if that makes any sense. And so I just figured it was a jake. And I looked at you and I was like, you feel like killing a jake today? And you're like, if I can shoot one, I'll shoot a jake for my first turkey.
Because I've been chasing my first turkey for how many years?
It's been a long time.
I mean, we've been together, what, 5?
No.
Yeah.
6.
Well,
We've been married over 5. We've been
a lifetime.
dating 6 plus.
But I mean, I've been chasing my first turkey for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while.
So I would, if it's legal, I'm on it.
Yeah. So anyway, we get set up on this thing, and put Casey up front. I get the camera on, and we start working this bird. And we're in an area where, you know, when turkeys are roosted in that spot, we're where they want to be, and we don't hear any other birds, and it should be kind of a no-brainer, slam dunk, young turkey. He's hammering it hard off the roost, and so
And my adrenaline's pumping,
oh,
and
man,
I'm nervous.
Yeah. And so you can hear this bird after fly down time, you know, what you would consider to be time for these turkeys to be on the ground. He'll move over, you know, to our left. His, you know, if he was facing us and we were facing him, he would be moving to our left, and it would sound like he was, you know, 60, 70 yards and closing. Real good gobble, you know, same little short one, but louder. And then he'd turn and he'd work back. And so we did that for about 15, 20 minutes, and then finally we moved on up on top of the hill, and we could see the edge of this pasture that was off the property that we had permission to hunt. It was on the neighbor's property, and I kept telling Casey, I said, well, he's just out there strutting in that pasture. But I never could just shake this idea. It's like, that gobble just sounds funny.
But you didn't say that to me.
No.
So in my shoes, this is just a typical turkey hunt. Excitement, getting closer. Again, my adrenaline's still pumping, heart rate up and down, depending on where that turkey's moving.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
continue.
I was right there with you because there were several times I told you I was like, okay, he's committed. He's gobbled 4 or 5 times in a row.
Oh, I was ready, and I had visions.
And was getting closer each time,
yeah.
and just hammering it. Everything I threw at him. Dog bark, gobble. I cut at him, gobble. Crows, he'd gobble. And I'd call to him again, he'd gobble 3, 4, 5 times in a row, just hammering it, son. Well, after about 35, 40 minutes of this, and he still hasn't committed, it was like somebody hit me in the back of the head, and I just started kind of chuckling to myself and just laughing.
And I hear him laughing.
And so I pull my phone out and I text James, the guy whose property it was. I sent him a text and I said, hey man, quick question. Your neighbor that has this pasture back in this corner, he wouldn't by chance happen to have a tame turkey out there that he would eat? And James almost immediately, and I hated to bother him because his wife had just had a baby. I know he was at the hospital and probably hadn't got a lot of sleep. But he texted me back and he was like, oh man, I'm so sorry, I forgot to tell you. He's like, yeah, they just moved in and they've got a tame turkey out there, but he will absolutely gobble at you.
He didn't stop.
No, we walked away from him. I rolled up and I told Casey, I said, we gotta go. She said, why? He's right there. I said, we've been calling to a tame turkey who's probably in a pen
It's crazy.
this entire morning. But anyway,
It was exciting. Exciting because at least I heard something. Hunters new and old. It gets discouraging because the first time I went out with you, we didn't hear anything. For the, when you were talking about the night before, or the afternoon before you killed your turkey.
Right.
We heard nothing.
Nothing.
And
fresh sign everywhere. Fresh tracks everywhere, but not a peep.
Yeah, and then I knew that this was going to be my last chance this season. And so even with hindsight, knowing what it was still better than being out there all morning with nothing.
I mean, not hearing a bird. Yeah.
I got a little bit of money's worth.
Yeah. So if anybody has somebody that wants to listen to some turkeys gobble, I'll see if James will let you go out there and practice your turkey calling with this guy. This guy's tame turkey that lives in that pasture. But rest of the morning was kind of a bust. We got some good walking in, spent some good quality time together, and then came on back home. Casey had some stuff she had to do.
A kid's birthday party.
Yeah, had a birthday party she had to go to, and so we hunted till about 10:30, 11, then came on home, and then that was it. The last morning of the season, which was a Sunday, was probably some of the best gobbling I heard all season. And I was in between 2 gobblers that, one was probably 75 yards from me and the other one was maybe 60. And true to form, as soon as they flew down, both of them hit the ground, went the other way, and wound up chasing one of them for about 4 hours that morning. Never could get in front of him or get him to commit. And then, before noon, I unloaded my gun and racked it up, and that was it for the season. So, did put one in the freezer, and we've already eaten about half of him. And so we've got two loads, 1 turkey's worth of breast still in the freezer, and hadn't decided what we're going to do with those yet, but we'll let you guys know what recipe would come up. A friend of mine, Scott Rhodes, Scott did this recipe with a turkey breast that one of the ones either he or Jane killed, where
probably Jane.
Yeah, probably Jane. I want to be
my
Jane
hero
when I grow up. He brined it in sugar salt solution for about 24 hours, and then lightly dusted it in a poultry rub, and then slow smoked it for about a couple hours until it got to about 160, 165 internal temp, and then pulled it off and let it rest, and he said that was dang good. So we're always looking for something to do besides the typical fried up. Not that it's not good, it's completely worth the effort, but frying's messy. You got all this oil you got to deal with afterwards. Plus, it's not as healthy for you as
Yeah, metabolism's
other
not
options.
on my side right now.
So,
Let me ask you this though,
you got the COVID fluffy going on.
something. But when I think about deer hunting versus turkey hunting, turkey, I know it's arguable, but turkey just seems to be more challenging. It's almost like people who love turkey hunting, even if it's frustrating hunt or even season, it's almost like that chase keeps you going back every year. Like you don't ever feel like you've conquered the turkey.
Right.
Now that's the way I perceive when you're talking about it and reflecting on a turkey season, where a deer season, you have those hunts that are challenging and that push you to kind of persevere in ways, and you're trying to figure out the deer, but it's just not as active of a chase to me.
Well, deer, in my opinion, and I love whitetails. There's nothing I love more than bow hunting whitetails. Big, small, old, young. I don't discriminate. I like killing big deer just like everybody else, but I just like hunting whitetails. Whitetails, in my opinion, have a higher predictability factor. They're easier to pattern. They're driven by three things. They're driven by food and their stomachs. So their stomachs dictate a lot of what they do. They're driven by the rut and breeding, and they are driven by safety and security. So if you can figure those three things out, where do they feel most secure, and what's the easiest way to approach them, and where's their main food source, because they got to eat, right? And taking advantage of when they let their guards down during the breeding season. To me, they're just easier to pattern. It doesn't mean that they're easy to hunt. They're just easier when you compare and contrast them to turkeys. Turkeys, you don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, they don't even know what they're going to do. I mean, there's some days you can go out and and there's been some studies, and Dr. Collier and Dr. Chamberlain have talked about barometric pressure. That barometer's rising, they're going to gobble more. It does not necessarily mean that they're going to be more receptive and responsive to calling, but they are going to gobble more. And that's one of the things that's so tough about turkeys, is that they never do the same thing the same way every time. There was a guy one time that did the math on it, and so if a turkey's roosted in a tree, and we're going to call that tree the center of a circle, and you draw a line out 100 yards from that tree, and so your radius of this circle is 100 yards. If you can put yourself within 100 yards of that tree and sit on that circle, and let's say your range to target, like your effective killing range, is 40 yards either direction, right? And so now you have a 40-yard circle around you, right? And so your 40-yard circle overlaps with his 100-yard. Your 40-yard radius overlaps with his radius, and now that puts him only 60 yards from your kill zone. And so if he flies down and walks anywhere in that direction, in that pie shape, I think you've got a 30% chance
Yeah, I was
of
going to
killing
say
that bird.
fraction.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a pie piece, right? And so if he goes dead away from you, you're not going to kill him. If he goes 90 degrees right or left, you probably aren't going to kill him in anywhere in that 180 degrees. But if he flies down and walks anywhere in this half of the circle towards you, it gives you don't even have to make a call. There's just a higher probability that you're going to kill that bird. the minute you start calling to that turkey, now all of a sudden all bets are off. And because if there's a hen with him and she's competitive, she's going to take him the other way, and he's going to follow her because he's not going to walk away from a hen that he can see to go to one that he can't. But then some days he will. You just never know, right? And so they're so unpredictable. But going back to your original question, I think it comes back to the same old. It's the reason why we run races that suck. It's the reason why our exercise routine is terrible, because all of that suffering that you're going through, when you finally get done, when you finally kill a turkey, or just even at the end of the hunt, it sucks while it's going on because you're walking, you're tired, you're hot, you're thirsty, you're hungry because we don't,
You're sitting in one position on the ground up against a tree for like an hour.
Yeah.
That always kills me. But what I was really getting at though, well, finish what you were going to say. Sorry.
But anyway, at the end of all that, like once you get to the end of the day, or you finally kill that turkey, there's all of that stuff that's terrible while you're doing it is fun when you look back on it. And so it's so rewarding because of all the work that you have to do and the work that goes into it. Not just the work of the actual hunt itself, but the work leading up to it. And so you have people that are just exceptional land managers that put in a ton of time and energy, the other 11 months out of the year, so that they can have all of these quality experiences during that 12th month that turkey season's in. But the rewards and the suffering is no different than anything else. Nobody ever went through something that was easy and unchallenging and look back on it and go, well, that was, it's just non-impactful.
Right.
The fun is always, it's just like we said, no good story ever started out with. You remember that one time we did something and it was okay and nothing bad happened, and
right.
It's,
So then the last question, and then we can kind of move on, but in your opinion, game you've hunted and even animals that you haven't had a chance to hunt, in your opinion, what would you say is the most challenging animal to hunt?
turkeys, without a doubt. Turkeys and elk. The elk from the physical standpoint of it, turkeys from the strategic standpoint of it. And they're purists out there, right? And so there are people that are, self-proclaimed purists that they don't want to kill a turkey unless they call it in, right? And then, they'll say, well, if I can't get them inside 30 yards, I'm not going to shoot them. And they have to be coming to me, and I have to have fooled them. And I get that, but I'm of the opinion that I can't deer hunt them, and it's not because I'm morally opposed to just sitting in one spot that I know that turkeys frequent and waiting for one to come by. I just don't have the patience for it. And turkey hunting's an interactive sport. I want to walk, I want to move. It's my time to be able to just bust through the woods, go into areas that you would normally avoid during deer season for whatever reason, scout around and look at things. But I like walking through the woods and seeing things that I haven't ever seen before, and I think that goes down to part of it. But from a physical standpoint, I think elk hunting is probably the most challenging. But from a strategic standpoint, in the southeast, turkeys are king as far as the difficulty. If you can kill a turkey, an eastern turkey, east of the Mississippi River, you can go out west and hunt Merriam's and Rio Grandes and just absolutely wipe population out. When people see guys from the southeast come out west to turkey hunt, they know that their turkey population is getting ready to take a hit because of just how tough these birds are to hunt. That strategically, it's like putting members of a SEAL team up against the Boy Scouts. You're just you're gonna get raped. I know some guys who are they're SEAL Team 6 level turkey hunters, and they will absolutely do whatever they can to get those birds killed from, using topography, terrain to their advantage, getting in front of those birds, or just doing nothing more than just staying with a flock of turkeys until they aggravate them to the point that the gobbler has to come over there. They just don't give them a choice, and so it's a tough animal to hunt for sure. Good question. One of the things that we've seen and heard people talk about, as far as relating to turkey season, is this COVID impact, and the impact that this shutdown and this virus, whether you believe it's real or fake, doesn't matter. The effects are going to be felt regardless of your opinion on if things real or a hoax or not. And so I'm not even going to scratch that. It's beyond, it's above my pay grade anyway. But what we do know is that there were more people hunting this year because they had more time to hunt. They were either working from home or not working at all. And so there were more turkey hunters in the woods. And we saw numbers coming out of North Carolina and Georgia and South Carolina where they killed more turkeys on Youth Day, and don't quote me on these numbers, I don't have them in front of me pulled up, but you can go and fact check me if you want to. But they killed more turkeys on Youth Day this year in North Carolina, threefold above what they killed on Youth Day last year. And then you couple that with the amount of adults that then hit the woods after youth season, and you're talking about a lot of birds died this year just from the sheer man hours. There wasn't an increase in population, obviously, because the population's down all across the southeast, but the number of hunter hours spent in the woods by more hunters simply put them in more positions to be successful and kill more turkeys. And so, from our standpoint, maybe it wasn't a bad thing that we only killed one in our household this year. But I won't sit here and tell you that I'm not selfish enough that I would have filled my 3 tags and certainly helped you fill your 3 tags had we had that opportunity. I'm just as guilty as the rest of them when it comes to that. But my hypocrisy is no better or worse than anybody else's. It's just a different flavor. So we see, and what we are seeing is an increase in the number of people that are hunting multiple states. And I had people contact me about wanting to come hunt South Carolina because they were already tagged out in 2 other states. And I've got friends of mine that travel all over the United States hunting turkeys. And so when you look at the impact, and that's not anything new for some of those guys. Some of those guys have been doing that for years, but you do have more people traveling. And and then that kind of spills over into increased license sales, which is great because they're buying a license in those other states, but they're adding pressure to other states' turkeys just like they're adding pressure to our state's turkeys. And so I don't know what the right answer is. Hopefully these guys who study this stuff for a living will figure something out. But we know that we've been killing them too early. That research is in. We've been killing these birds before they've really had a chance to breed, and moving the season dates back into April and lowering the limit and cutting it where you can only kill one within that first week to 10 days, and then you can fill your other 2 tags after that. And hopefully that'll take some pressure off and increase the nest success.
I got that turkey survey.
Right. So talk about the questions that they asked on that turkey survey. You already mailed it back in?
I did. I just put it in yesterday. So I received a survey from DNR about the turkey season, asked if, not in this order, but asked which counties I hunted in, if I how many total turkeys I harvested this year, in which counties did I harvest, and how many jakes or how many gobblers did I harvest in each county. There were more questions that I could have answered had I harvested one, but since I didn't,
Didn't
of
they
course.
ask you about the COVID shutdown and how that impacted?
Oh yeah, it asked if I hunted more due to COVID, or if it prohibited, or not prohibited, but what word am I looking for? Kept me from hunting what I would normally hunt.
So how do you think, when you asked me that question, I said no. I didn't think that it had impacted the amount that we hunted at all, more or less. But do you think it did?
For us, no. I think it is in a correlation with how much people work.
Right.
You know, if somebody was able to do work from home and their schedule, became more flexible, they weren't clocking in, at a certain time and getting out at a certain time every day. I think that it probably opened a lot more opportunities for people to go.
Yeah.
But no, I can't say for us, because your schedule swings, so you find time.
Well, it was fun. I can't wait till next year. I say it every season. I'm glad when it's over, and then in about 2 days after it ends, I'm ready to get back after it again. So turkeys have always held a special place with me, and always will. So here's hoping that we get this population thing figured out. And some people think that we're just, the pendulum swinging the other way, and that it's going to start coming back, and we'll get back to the glory days again, that it's just a natural population cycle shift. But regardless of the cause, I just want our kids to be able to hear turkeys gobble at some point in time, with an opportunity to pull the trigger on them and experience that. So tell me what's been going on around the house with kids and family stuff.
So quarantine, I've been telling everybody that it didn't change our lives much. It did change mine from the perspective of a mother, in that the small things that I committed to, whether it be just making sure that I made it to the gym at some point during the day and dragging the kids with me, or getting Elizabeth to an afternoon dance class, and the boys had started jiu-jitsu. So they were different days and they were afternoon. I really realized how much stress that put on all of us to try to get to those things.
Right.
And so with quarantine, I really couldn't keep up. Those places offered online type stuff for the kids, but with them being 4 years old, and I didn't have the patience, and they didn't have the attention span. So I appreciate the efforts that people made. Definitely continued with what we were paying for,
Right.
but I just kind of stopped everything. And so with being in the house, the weather really changed in such a positive way from the winter time.
Isn't it great?
Oh, I knew it had rained a lot this winter, but I didn't realize it until it was so nice that we have spent almost every afternoon outside for 3 to 5 hours nonstop.
Every day.
I
I joked around, and I was telling some people that I thought that the government was controlling the weather, because everybody kept saying that once it got hot and the humidity kicked up, that it would weaken the virus and shut this thing down, and that the government was controlling the weather and pumping out all this nice weather with low humidity and low temps to keep the disease going. The crazy thing is that there are people out there who would actually believe that mess, but it's just fun to joke about. But so
that being said, because the things we were committed to were no longer, and there was more time outside, I really felt like I could regroup mentally and try to do some things that I had put on a list in my mind that I wanted to do. For example, something as small that I just posted on our Instagram yesterday about I'd taken some peels from oranges and lemons to try to make some vinegar-based all-purpose cleaner.
Yeah.
Hashtagged it non-toxic. You know, we're not completely organic here.
No.
And I mean, I'm not even going to pretend. And when I have conversations with people about that, that's always the goal, is to become the most organic in the sense of natural, you know, from, you know, field to fork or farm to table, however you want to, you know, church up the term
Right.
or the idea. But, you know, why not? Like, if there are things like that out there, why not? It really could save money in the long run. Again, we're not the most thrifty of people. We're not trying to penny pinch anything, but I think that a lot of it too comes from my yearning to learn, even while I'm being a stay-at-home mom.
That's right.
It's easy to get in that mindset as a stay-at-home mother that, you know, you've heard mothers talk about how they don't have conversations with adults until the spouse gets home. And usually, but after they've had a long day at work, the husband is not really conversational. And, you know, you can really get caught up in that mindset when there are things that I like to try. Does that mean that for every single cleaning product in our house that I'm going to make by hand from items I get at the supermarket? No. I like convenience, and I like to make sure things are clean. And so a lot of that is the balance of me really going against what I've always been told as this will kill germs. You know, the scary, dreaded germs.
Germs.
You know, because I'm sitting there thinking, how is just this vinegar going to kill?
You mean the things that you need to activate your
Right.
immune system so that you don't get sick when the bad stuff comes on?
Right.
We won't go down that rabbit trail, but anyway, we're too clean. You guys eat with dirty hands because we're too clean as a society. It's the reason why we're weak.
But, you know, too, so people are going to start seeing some more of that through our social media, because part of what we're trying to do through Motivus Outdoors is not only promote hunting, fishing, conservation, public lands, even private, you know, even people managing their own private land, but also too, you know, what we are as a family and what we're trying to accomplish with our kids. I put a video out about the why, and it's the simple things. Like, these are countercultural and they seem extreme and radical, but it's really just simplifying things.
Right.
Did it take more work for me to peel those lemons and oranges? Because I really didn't use the lemons for anything. I bought them solely for the peel,
Right.
for that purpose. It took about 15 minutes of time and a little bit of effort, and I had to watch a video from Mary Curry. She's on YouTube. She has her own YouTube channel now, and it's just local in Spartanburg. I know her through the gym, a Suburban Pioneer. And so it's just tidbits of how to do things like that.
Yeah.
I want to incorporate that more so people are seeing what we're doing.
We'll link her stuff when we put this out.
She's just started, and, you know, she's planning on doing stuff for composting and simple
That's
stuff.
what we need to get started.
Yes.
Is our compost.
It's on my list. But simple stuff, guys. Like, I'm being real, okay? My domestic skills are just really starting to, I'll say, get blooms. They're not even, like, fully blooming yet. And so even just a simple video of how to properly cut an onion so that your eyes aren't watering. I mean, Mary's putting stuff out. It's practical stuff for anybody,
Yeah.
not just radical granola homemaker stuff. And I use the granola term just because it's familiar, not in any type of condescending way.
Be careful, it might be a trigger.
I love all the granola.
Get some hate mail.
I really do like granola. But anyway, so, you know, we put stuff about the chicken.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot. We call our place a homestead, a farm, and you know, if you came out here, we've up until recently, we've had one hen that has survived over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Who, her name is Aretha, and we have featured her recently. We,
She's an OG.
Right.
She's been here since the beginning.
she's seen a lot go down.
She's got some PTSD, man.
And-
She's seen some stuff.
And
For
so
sure.
we'll post some about that and just about, really, I think mostly from my perspective of, and again, an educational standpoint of, we just purchased 6 chicks, and we've had some little snags in that. Some of our own fault, but then some too of just flat out nature.
Yeah.
And so can we say?
Yeah.
Like last night, Glenn, we put pictures of a rat snake that Glenn found in the coop. And the reason it was that he even went to look for it is the day before I saw probably, and I'm not being dramatic, I took a picture, but if you had stretched the rat snake out, it would have easily been 5 feet long. And it was pretty thick. I mean, it was the biggest snake I'd seen in person.
Right.
And I was by myself. It was outside the coop on the ground. I know not to kill snakes. They're not everybody's worst enemies. I said, Glenn, is this thing going to try to get the chicks? I know snakes try to get eggs, but the chicks were closed up in the coop. The door to the run was open so they could start to try to come out, but they were secure as far as we knew. Well, I just took a tool and I just shoved the snake, you know, kind of shooed it away into the woods behind the coop. Glenn got home from work last night, checked in on the chicks, and one was completely missing.
Yeah.
And what would you say, how would you describe the size of these chicks now?
Quail.
They're starting to try to
size.
fly.
Yeah. They're little small quail size. Yeah.
So Glenn looked up in the top corner of the coop and found the black snake. Can I call it a black snake? Or is that like really amateur? So the rat snake up in the corner. I know for a fact that it was not the same one. And even though that chick was missing, Glenn assured me that there was no way that snake that he found last night could have eaten the chick, because there was absolutely no evidence.
Yeah, there's no lump, and that snake wouldn't have had time to eat that chicken and digest it for there not to be a lump. Like you eat a bird, if that snake ate a bird that size, it's gonna have to go somewhere and rest up for a while to digest that thing. It's not gonna be out and about, and so we've got another one, which I assume is the one that you saw the first time.
I mean, it's still out there, and so going back to it, I mean, there are things that you have to learn that really, even if you research.
And we didn't kill the snake. We relocated it about a
Yeah.
half a mile away to the back of the property.
Yeah, so no hate mail
Yeah.
about that, but.
No hate mail about us not killing it either. Bunch of nature haters.
But when it's our fault and our, you know, just ignorance in one sense, where it's like, okay, we should have done this and it would have protected the chicks. You know, that's hard. That really is hard. That's harder to take than even this, where you're thinking, they were protected, and the snake found its way in, and that is just flat out nature. You know?
Right.
Suburban old me is like, that's nature. So now I'm trying to research, you know, ways that are non-toxic, non-chemical ways to try to keep snakes out, not even trying to protect eggs, but protecting the chickens.
Yeah.
So it's just stuff like that, you know, are we chicken farmers? No. Are we going to be, you know, getting enough eggs to sustain one breakfast for our family? No, we're not. But
That's the goal. I mean, that's our eventual goal, is to get enough chickens to where not only do we have enough so that we don't have to buy eggs, but that we can actually sell some eggs.
right. But it's all about just doing something different. and Glenn always talks about, you always talk about the science behind the mentality, or the how dumb it is when people continue to do the same thing over and over and over and expect different results. And so some of the things that we're doing that people question or kind of laugh at, our family laughs at us a little bit, in some of the things that we try, but it's just us trying to be a little different. Like, try it.
Yeah.
Why not? That's our mentality. And so, just, I hope that that is something that our listeners and even our audience through our social media can kind of embrace and just see, because I think that that truly is what I am the most proud of in us at this point.
Yeah.
Is the accepting of outside ideas. I say outside, non-traditional things that me and you necessarily didn't grow up doing or hearing or trying, and just trying to incorporate it to just see what we can do with it as a family.
Absolutely. And just I think if any of this silliness that's been happening, just the way the world's changed over the last couple of months has taught us, is that, one, a lot of the stress and the anxiety that people go through is voluntary. And we subject ourselves to things voluntarily and then turn around and complain about them like it's I've got to do all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden, when you aren't able to do all of that stuff that isn't necessary, you feel this pressure come off of you. And that's one of the things that I've heard from several people, is like, we just didn't know, we never realized how much of our busyness was non-essential, just busyness for the sake of busyness. And one of the things that I was proud of, and it sounds kind of braggadocious, but it's not, is that, and we talked about it before, is that our life just really didn't change that much, other than the dance recitals, the inability to be able to go to our gym, and
and
jiu-jitsu. And we're not knocking any of that stuff.
That is totally on me personally. I just, it's my brain, and it's for me right now was just a stress.
But our kids haven't missed it. They haven't missed it because the things that they've been able to do. I mean, they have spent dang near every day in that creek, flipping over rocks, chasing salamanders, crawfish, catching frogs. Yeah. Catching snakes, and they're getting after those garter snakes that are up underneath our planter boxes. It's the benefits of us having to spend more time at home has far outweighed any negative. We don't eat out, and so we didn't miss fast food or restaurants just because we don't eat out. We can't afford it. It's $75 every time the six of us go out to eat. But just the time that they've been able to stay at home, I've still been working, but the time that they've been able to stay at home with you and the amount of time that you put them outside has been a huge benefit. So I think you guys have done a great job, and I think you've done a good job of looking for other activities. They've watched you plant vegetables.
Yeah, I tried to garden on my own this year.
They've watched you do all of these outdoor activities with them, and that's, while I'm at work, and they've watched us split and stack firewood and cut wood, and
they're watching me season deer meat.
Yeah.
In different seasonings.
That's right, cooking deer meat, and and they were playing today. I came out this morning, and they were having a picnic.
Said, what were they eating?
I said, what are y'all doing? She said, Elizabeth said, we're having a picnic. I said, oh, cool. What are we having? She said, deer loin. Yeah. She said, we're eating deer loin for our picnic. So
right on.
Yeah, absolutely. So she's got it down pat. So from here on out, there's a couple of from now until the end of summer, until fall comes in, we're going to be talking primarily about happenings in and around the house. We're going to have some guests as well. And so we'll be doing some guest interview podcast. We're going to be talking a lot about deer season prep, and scouting, and everything that goes in with that. Deer season never ends; it only changes phases. And so you guys always remember that if you're not working. And so the things that we're going to be focusing on coming up, we're going to start practicing more with our bows, getting Casey some saddle time, getting her used to climbing in her saddle. I've got some modifications I need to do to her saddle, change some ropes out in her bridge, get some lighter, stronger stuff on that, and then talking about some land management and some prep work, and then we're going to be touching base, and this is something that I haven't had a chance to talk with Casey about, but I'm going to approach some people about being regular contributors from different parts of the state of South Carolina and around the southeast that we'll touch base with every couple of weeks and just kind of see where they are with their season prep. So unfortunately, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just saw some discussion on the South Carolina BHA Facebook page about the Pint Night in Charleston, June 20th.
Yep. So Pint Night in Charleston, June 20th, and
The one in the upstate, I think, is gonna be, still is to be determined,
TBA.
but June 20th.
All right. Well, that's all I had for my notes for today. We've been going about an hour and 15 minutes, and unfortunately, I have to get ready to go to work. So we're going to shut everything down and get all this packed up, and I'll have this edited and out as quick as I can. Hopefully, be able to get it done tonight, both the video and audio, and we may be able to marry those. We'll see. If I've got that kind of skill in the editing platform. But anyway, if you guys have any questions, y'all don't be afraid to reach out to us. Any comments, if you have suggestions for guests that or topics that you want us to discuss, or guests that you would like for us to have on, don't hesitate to ask. We still have some hats. This hat and this shirt are getting ready to get shipped out today to Connor Stone. So Connor, your stuff's going to be on the way, but we do still have some hats from our last run and a few shirts. And so you guys jump on the website, motivusoutdoors.com, go to the store, click on it, hit the purchase button, and Casey will get those shipped out to you as fast as we can.
And we're always interested in any wild game recipes that you have. We've enjoyed putting a few of those out here, but you tag us at Motivus Outdoors on our Instagram feed, and we'd love to highlight them and look at them and try them here at home as well.
We're going to be putting out more recipes too, because simple stuff, right? Because we're a busy family, not just like everybody else, and so practical, low prep time type stuff, and then we'll be putting out some other prep stuff. I do have about 5-6 pounds of roast that have been soaking in a brine for about 5 days, and so they'll be getting pulled out tomorrow and smoked, because we're making pastrami, and so we'll show you guys that as well. So anything else?
We're good.
Any concluders?
No.
You're good? All right, guys, thank you. We appreciate your time, and until next time, we're out. Good job.
You too. Try to contribute.